Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger. Janelle's off tonight. The man accused of raping and trying to kill a Billings woman over 20 years ago makes his first appearance in court today. Zachary O'Neill was linked to the 1998 attack thanks to DNA evidence. Today, he pleaded not guilty to the 2 felony charges against him. Q2's Samantha Sullivan was in the courtroom this afternoon where we learned that prosecutors are up against the clock to get that case resolved. Samantha?
Well, Russ, that's right. Prosecutors will have just 4 months to resolve the case against O'Neill. That's because he's currently serving time in a Washington prison on a burglary charge. O'Neill appeared before Judge Jessica Fair this afternoon. He was transported to Billings earlier this week to face the charge of rape and attempted homicide for the 1998 attack. But in 120 days, he will have to be back in Washington to continue to serve his sentence, which runs through 2024. Prosecutors asked the judge for an expedited trial schedule so the case can be resolved before then. According to court documents, O'Neill confessed to the crime while he was being interviewed by Yellowstone County Sheriff's deputies on an unrelated case. Testing was done and DNA evidence from the scene matched O'Neill. The next step, prosecutors and the defense will meet to come up with a schedule. Meanwhile, O'Neill will be held in the Yellowstone County Detention Center. Russ?
All right. Sammy, and we want to talk about the weather for a moment now. Bob, we woke up to quite a bit of snow on the ground this morning. You're saying more could be on the way.
That's right. We called it the shoveler last night, and of course, we're probably going to get a chance to do it again tomorrow. Let me show you how much snow we actually got out of this thing. As you see, northwest of Billings, we had 4.8 inches of snow. Hardin had 4. Same thing at Livingston. Billings Heights had 4. Laurel had 3 inches of snow. Up at the Billings Airport, they measured they do a snow depth measurement. They had 6 inches, but they started at 2 inches, so that storm only gave them 4 inches of snow as well. And as you can see, that storm continues to pull its way out of the region tonight, heading up towards the northeast corner of the state. But look what's coming our way. Tomorrow morning, here comes another batch of snow, probably sometime about 6:30 in the morning, and it'll stick around throughout much of the morning. And we'll have more of that coming your way in just a few more minutes. Go back to you, Russ.
All right, thank you, Bob. A state lawmaker from Missoula is asking the legislature to approve a bill to study legalization of marijuana in Montana, saying she expects that issue to be on the ballot next year. The bill would create an interim committee of state lawmakers to start studying the issue this summer. It would report back to the 2021 legislature. State Senator Diane Sands told the Senate Judiciary Committee she fully expects a voter initiative will be on the ballot in 2020 to legalize the drug. She said policymakers should get ahead of the issue and study what's happened in other states that have legalized marijuana. Sands says when medical marijuana use took off in Montana a decade ago, state lawmakers had to react in crisis mode, and she wants to avoid that happening again.
There are many valid positive arguments for legalization and many valid arguments against legalization. And I don't propose that this interim committee would make any recommendation one way or another on that. But it is simply to prepare for the fact that should it become legal, we in the legislature will have to adopt many kinds of legal laws that will have to implement that.
Medical marijuana is now legal in 33 states. Recreational is legal in 10. Holding to his word, President Trump declared a national emergency this morning shortly after he signed a bill to keep the government funded. But with it, new debate over executive authority and presidential overreach came to the forefront. The president's emergency declaration allows him to gain access to funds to address the situation on the southern border. The bill the president signed today only allotted $1.3 billion. That's far short of his requested $5.8 billion. Now, $8 billion will be pulled together by redirecting defense and treasury funds. Montana's members of Congress were quick to react to the president's announcement.
The president's emergency declaration is a divisive and dangerous move that flies in the face of the Constitution. The president's defiance of those laws to raid our military construction resources will come at the expense of our state's defense installation and threaten the checks and balances at the heart of our democracy.
Illegal immigrants and illegal drugs are flooding across our very porous and primitive border. I support the president's efforts to secure our southern border. He needs to do what's necessary within his legal authority to secure this country and secure our southern border.
Both Senator Daines and Congressman Greg Gianforte visited the southern border. Representative Gianforte sent us this statement. Violent cartels profit from illegally trafficking drugs and people into our nation through the unsecured borders. The president must do what's needed within his constitutional authority to secure the border and protect our country, he says. Now some legislators are working out ideas on how to stop the president's declaration. The president acknowledged that this case might eventually end up in the Supreme Court, but he also says he'll be successful in court. The parent company that owns the talc mill in Three Forks has now filed for bankruptcy. Imerys Talc America Incorporated filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after thousands of lawsuits have come forward charging that the talc the company produces causes cancer. In a news release, the mill said this is an important step for the business. It also stated that the safety of talc has been shown through studies and that the lawsuits are not merited. In a statement from Talc America, a spokesperson says Imerys Talc America and all of the locations, including Three Forks, will continue to operate as usual throughout this process. Back in August of last year, 35 Imerys Talc plant employees were locked out of the job site for about 3 months after contract negotiations fell through. Montana's suicide rates were sadly the highest in the country in 2018, and one MSUB professor received an award to travel across the globe to try and learn new ways to help prevent that. Q2's Zoe Zandora met with her to find out how.
I believed it was a strong proposal, and I know it's an important issue, but those are very competitive awards, and so, you know, I really feel honored that they selected me.
The award Joy Honey is talking about is the Fulbright Scholar Program, a program of the United States Department of State Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, allowing scholars to travel and study internationally.
I really just wanted to go somewhere, like go teach in another country, and I wanted some sort of international experience. And I went to our Director of International Studies, and he said, well, you have to apply for a Fulbright.
The Fulbright program awards around 8,000 grants each year, Joy Honey being one of them. Currently serving as a professor of sociology at Montana State University Billings and acting associate dean at the College of Business, Honey wants to take her studies internationally, and through research, she realized there are a lot of similarities between Finland and Montana and the suicide rates.
Once I started looking at all the similarities between Finland and Montana, I thought, well, this is a great opportunity.
Not only is this prestigious award big for MSUB, it's big for Montana, because what Joy will bring back from Finland will help one of the biggest issues plaguing the state.
Alcohol use and abuse is high in both Montana and Finland, as well as a very high firearm ownership rate, as does Montana, which Honey says is the most common method of suicide.
First of all, geography. It's northern, has long, dark, cold winters. It also is sparsely populated, so there aren't a lot of big urban areas to get services to people.
In the 1980s, Finland had one of the highest suicide rates in the world, and within 10 years, they were able to cut that in half.
If they have so many similarities, and they've implemented all of these programs that have helped, maybe there are things that we can learn from what they've done and implement here.
Honey hopes that through her international studies, she can bring back good concrete ideas and ways we can combat suicide here in Montana.
My best hope is that I could come back and publish what I found in my work and bring that out to our communities and start tackling our own problem.
In Billings, Zoe Zandora, MTN News.
And Zoe says Joy will be taking her family with her to Finland when they will be leaving, and when they do leave for there. Well, in the midst of a cold and flu season, St. Vincent Healthcare is seeing an influx of people needing care, but when people use the emergency room when they don't need to, that causes a lot of delays.
Instead of choosing to go to their primary care provider or the urgent care clinic, we're actually seeing those patients in the emergency department now, which can delay care for those emergent patients that are coming in. So we've had patients backing up that have been pretty sick and are unable to get beds in the inpatient unit due to kind of all of the volume that we've had here in the.
Kaufman advises that fevers under 100 degrees and sinus complaints can be taken to primary care or urgent care. Those experiencing chest pain, dizziness, or difficulty breathing are encouraged to go to the ER. It's also important to get yourself a primary care physician who can assist in preventative care. And if you're unsure of which course of action is best, St. Vincent Healthcare has a doctor on-demand service available where you can have a live conversation with a doctor via video chat through the telemed. All right, up next on Q2, what do you picture when you think of monster truck drivers? We're going to introduce you to one that is changing the face of monster truck events. And later in sports, divisional berths up for grabs in Columbus. Semifinal highlights from the 4B on the way.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.